Hello, I'm Stuart Craner, co-founder of Thinkers50. Welcome to our weekly LinkedIn live session, celebrating some of the brightest new stars in the world of management thinking. In January, we announced the Thinkers50 Radar Community for 2024. These are the upcoming management thinkers we believe individuals and organizations should be listening to. The 2024 list was our most eclectic, challenging yet. This year's Radar is brought to you in partnership with Deloitte and features business thinkers from the worlds of fashion, retail, branding, and communications, as well as statisticians, neuroscientists, and platform practitioners from the Nordics to New Zealand and Asia to America. Over the last few months, we've been meeting these fantastic thinkers in our weekly sessions, so we hope you've been able to join us for some great conversations. As always, please let us know where you're joining from and send in any comments, questions, observations, queries at any time during the 45-minute session. Our guest today is Stephanie LeBlanc Godfrey. Stephanie is Global Head of Inclusion Programs for Women of Color at Google. She graduated from the Stevens Institute of Technology in Electrical Engineering. After working in infrastructure engineering at Lehman Brothers, she transitioned into the digital media industry, spending the next 10 years working on big data, forecasting, and inventory management for Forbes Media, Fox News Digital, and NBC News Digital. Stephanie is the founder of Mother AI, a weekly AI learning journey series designed specifically for working parents and caregivers, and also of Parenting Backwards, which creates spaces and experiences for parents to develop parenting skills in the same way they develop their personal and professional skills. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart.
How did you make the journey from having a degree in electrical engineering to where you are now? It's a long way.
Yes, it is not a straight path. It's a curved path. And as I encourage, many folks who ask the same question that you do, you know, I can look back now and see how all of the dots connected. But being on the journey in real time, I did not know where I was going. But while I'm teaching the lessons that I've learned, which is you try new things and you get so many pieces of data to learn whether you will do that thing again or whether you will never do that thing again. And then you make a next step and you decide whether you will do that thing again or never do that thing again, and you take a next step. And so that's sort of I'll say a strategy now, looking back on it as to where I've been. But you know, going into the details of it, from the age of 10, I knew that I wanted to be an engineer. And so it's because I had an uncle who worked at IBM, bought me my first gateway computer. For those of you who remember the black and white cow spotted boxes, that was part of their marketing. And he would come over and he would open it up and show me all of the parts and, just give me the background of how it all works. And I was fascinated and sold at the age of 10. And so my mom took action right away and put me in every STEM program before the STEM acronym was as popular as it is now. After school, on the weekends, and in the summer. So I got my 10,000 hours in of STEM, and so that's where I, accepted my journey into Stevens Institute of Technology, where I majored in electrical engineering. And so during that portion of my life, I was part of what's called their co-op program. So the 5-year program, every other semester, I got a working opportunity for the entire semester, which is about give or take 3 months. And so by the time my senior year happened, and I'll never forget this, I was walking down the main street in the town that my school was in, and I get a phone call from Lehman Brothers that said, "Hey, we want to offer you a full-time role." And this was August of my senior year, so just as it was getting started. And so I enthusiastically, and maybe too quickly, because you're supposed to negotiate, said yes. But that, was the pinnacle of I said I wanted to be an engineer, and now I've got this engineering job ready and waiting for me. All I had to do was graduate. And so graduate I did. Went on to Lehman Brothers for about 2 years. But this was the moment that set off my first sort of like turn or pivot that ultimately has led me to where I am. And that first experience, I was, young Black woman in the engineering space at a financial company, and it was a very lonely experience. I was working with folks who were just at different life stages than I was. And I didn't know the words mentorship, I didn't know the words sponsorship. And I didn't know how to articulate that I needed support and help. And so while I was there suffering in silence, I just spent every night kind of figuring out, okay, I love, the technical aspect, and so I wanna be able to really nerd out in my role, but I also then wanna be more front-facing type sales, e-commerce. I was trying to figure it out. Is around 2008 at the time, so e-commerce was just blowing up at the time. And so I spent a year looking for a new opportunity. And I'll never forget this. Mike Smith of Forbes said, "You went to Stevens?" I said, "Yes." "You have a degree in electrical engineering?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "I know your brain. I'm hiring you." And so that then became the where that pivot took me into, which was digital media. Now, leaving Lehman was really tough for me because I was in that engineering space that was it felt like that is literally what it meant to be an engineer as a little kid. My little kid dream kind of realized. But then I got to use all those engineering skills, build hypothesis building, reverse engineering, analytical mindset, and apply that into a business realm. And so I started off at Forbes. I moved to Fox News Digital and supported their news portfolio. And then NBC Universal, where I supported the divestiture of Microsoft from the NBC products. And so went into that world and was climbing the ladder, the corporate ladder, director, multiple reports, all of these things. And then I got a call from a friend who said, Google's hiring. I think this role could be great for you. And I was like, I'm doing this thing, climbing the corporate ladder over here. I don't think I want to leave. And everyone around me said, when Google calls, you pick up the phone. And so I said, okay. And so I went through that intensive but fun hiring process, got the role there at Google, and I've been there now for 10 years. 10 years.
So you must be due another pivot.
So I did have a pivot at Google, but we'll get to that, I'm sure, through our conversation.
So in what ways now do you put into practice the skills you learned in electrical engineering, that hypothesis and all that kind of scientific thinking? Do you put that into practice now, do you think?
Absolutely. So I think, going from engineering to the business world proper to inclusion, having that sort of tri-discipline experience has allowed me to use all those skills across those disciplines. When it comes to inclusion and diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, when we are working in service of people, of our employees, we still need to use data to inform our strategy, both qualitative and quantitative. And so we need to have a hypothesis of, I think this could solve the problem. What are the metrics that we then need to apply to that to see whether something is successful? And so it's that sort of data collection and integrity rigor that I apply to the work that I do now to to make a hypothesis, test the thing, and be able to iterate quickly as to whether it's working because I've chosen the right KPIs or have at least set up a system that allows me to check in and say, okay, is this right? Okay, it's not. It's harming our community, or it's not just effective overall. Let's shift and try something else within a reasonable time with reasonable metrics that we can be able to determine its success.
So it's the metrics that back up the soft stuff. It's that combination of the hard data and the important humanity of an organization.
Right, the hard data and the stories, right? When it's particularly in this work, but I think even, when you're selling a product or service, folks want the data, the numbers, and there's a subset of folks who are like, I just want to see the numbers and that's how we make a decision. And then there are folks who are like, I just want to hear the stories and that's going to move me and make me want to take action X, Y, or Z. But to have the combination of both the data and the stories that can refute any roadblocks or pushback or just skepticism around a thing. Bringing that together makes it just a more solid infrastructure for which to build a strategy, program, product, service.
So who were your mentors along the way? So there was Mike who could see into your brain.
Yes.
Who,
Hey, Mike.
who else were there?
So Melanie Parker, she's our Chief Diversity Officer at Google. And not only has she been a mentor, but she's been a sponsor. And, this is an important distinction where a mentor can work with you through a thing, but a sponsor is talking about you when you're not in the room. They're bringing you into spaces that you didn't even think that you were ready for or should be in. And they're putting their name on the line for you to back you up because of their belief and proof that you can get the job done. Lisa Nichols is also a dear friend and mentor of mine that works on the inside of me, who I am and who I want to be and how I want to show myself into the world. Because on the work front and the professional front, you could just be on top of your game and getting all of these accolades and accomplishments. But if you don't feel good on the inside, then you don't really get to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Everyone else is giving you high fives and you just want to crawl in the corner. And so it's really important to do that self work as you go through your professional journey so you can feel as good as you look on paper.
Thank you for everyone who's joining us. Please send in your questions for Stephanie at any time. Stephanie, I think it's a really important distinction you made there between being a sponsor and a mentor. So you see a sponsor as they're kind of an advocate for you.
Yes.
They're going out into the organization, actively talking you up, whereas a mentor is a more personal relationship, and it's by its nature, it's private.
Yeah, the mentor is standing next to you, the sponsor is standing in front of you, opening the door, ushering you in. That's the way that I see it.
And we need more sponsors and mentors.
Yes. Well, I think the mentorship is the easy part of the equation. And there are, particularly for women, there are many studies where, that say that women are overcoached, over mentored, but under sponsored. And so that sponsorship piece is that connection that goes deeper than like, let me just help you here, but let me pull you along and pull you up. And so it's being able to provide visibility. So the sponsor needs to have the power and to activate that power in service of the goals that you have. And so they have to have the ability to say, "Hey, I'm bringing you to this conference. I'm nominating you for this thing. I'm bringing you in on this project, and I don't need anyone's approval because I'm the decision maker." And so there's a great opportunity for decision makers to realize that power and look for opportunities to enter into a mutually beneficial relationship with someone who has shown great potential. And the important piece about the mutually beneficial is that it's not a volunteer assignment. The sponsor gets as much out of that bond and connection or relationship as the sponsee or the protege does, because now they have access to a different part of the organization, a different perspective that they can use, some intel that they can get from the individual that they're working with, and the commitment and brain power of someone who is just excited to finally be seen, heard, and valued, and get the opportunity to really showcase their brilliance.
And tell me about the Google experience. So Google approached you, and
Yeah. So,
you were advised to seize the opportunity. But
yes.
how did that all work? I mean, I think it's Google's one of those organizations. There's very few organizations in the world that almost everyone would like to work for them or be involved with them in some way, and they're very high on that list. So what was the experience like, and how do you get an understanding of how Google works and the culture?
Sure. So, oh, I love this story because it was such a whirlwind and fun experience. So, a friend of mine who was already within Google made the referral for me for the role. It was within digital media, and so again, I had all the name brand experience that was directly related to the role. So that was the easy part. I think the way in which I was being interviewed. This was 2014. It was very much focused on, okay, your hard skills, but how do you think? How do you think? And this is what made the interview experience so different. So I had a total of 8 interviews over the course of about 2 months. So that was intensive. I was getting a little nervous of how many, excuses I could give about why I'm so dressed up or needed to take off for lunch. But my last interview, I was in a room with this gentleman, David Goodman, and he had one question for me in the interview, and it was, I'm an advertiser that wants to, work with a publisher. Sorry, I was on the publisher side. I'm a publisher and I want to make $100 million next year. You're Google. Tell me how I'm going to make that money. That was it. That was the instructions. And so I'm like, and he's like, there goes the whiteboard. And so I get up to the whiteboard and I'm like, okay. And so then I start asking questions. Okay, what type of publisher are you? What products are you selling? What CPMs do you currently have? Now I'm getting into jargon for digital advertising, but I started just asking questions to kind of create a picture of what type of publisher and what their just details of the organizations are. That's so that was part one. Then I said, okay, well, these are the types of products that, you could get into. And then we just started making up numbers. What's your audience size? And he's like 100,000. I'm like, okay, if your audience size is this, then this is, how many eyeballs get on 3 ads per page. And I just started working through it. And so after about like 15, 20 minutes of kind of going back and forth, he was making things up on the spot. I was asking these questions and we got to, they wouldn't make the 100 million in the first year. And he was like, that's it right there. And I'm like, what? I'm like sweating under my armpits. Like, what is happening? And he's like, I wanted to see how you think. What are the questions that you're asking? If you have no direction, if you have no information, the biggest value that we can get is understanding that you are going to think and ask the obvious questions and the unforeseen questions, so that you can make your best educated guess. And I was like, wow. I was like, could we do another one? And that was it. That was my last interview, and shortly thereafter, I got the offer. This time, I did negotiate, and yeah, and so said, so done. I've been there for a decade now.
So how do you think? It seems to me how you think goes back to your initial degree in electrical engineering, that kind of scientific approach, interrogating, asking the right questions.
So I've learned to use the word curiosity instead of being nosy.
It is the same though, isn't it?
It is the same. I'm nosy. I wanna know. I wanna know all the details, and I think leaning into that curiosity has served me well, because it's taken me out of my realm of, just the path in front of me. I know the path. Okay, I know I've got to get all of this information, but what about this angle? What about these cross-functional teams? How can I glean information from them, or maybe bring them into the conversation? And I think my time, at Google, I spent a lot of time asking folks who were their questions. Because for me, first generation American, first generation college graduate. And so, I came into Google thinking, hey, I made it. I guess I'll just retire here, because I mean, this is the top. And in the conversations that I had with so many of my colleagues, is that, yeah, Google's a great place, but it's a stepping stone for who I want to be. So there were so many folks who were getting their MBAs, their PhDs, opening yoga studios, plans to move abroad. I mean, their goals were endless. And Google was just an important and a meaningful step on their journey. And so leaning into the curiosity into their journeys ultimately shaped then how I showed up. I was like, oh, Google isn't the end all be all. It's just a place where I can learn and grow and, bring together all this information to inform who I want to be and what that looks like next. And so that then informed the pivot that I did from the publishing space into employee engagement, and specifically in inclusion. So I spent 4 or 5 years talking to CEOs of all the major publishers. I supported them in Latin America, Canada, and within the US. And so I would sit there with CEOs, CTOs, COOs, and talk to them about the investments that they've made. And here's what you can do. Just click this button within your dashboard and you can make an extra $1 million. And oftentimes they'd be like, great, sounds good. But also there was a large number that would be like, nope, not interested. Don't need the million. And so then it started to build this disconnect with me around, wow, you can just say no to $1 million. I have so many ideas of what can take place with $1 million. And so what that awakened in me is an interest in using that skill set of analysis, and then creating a story based on that data on what you should do next, but applying that to people who are in need. Right. And so in a different perspective, being able to pull that in. And so I did a pivot, which took about a year and a half, from our global sales organization into our global people operations organization.
Yeah, it's interesting about the Google culture. Do you think that kind of the asking of questions, that curiosity is part of the culture? And the second thing is, you said, Stephanie, that people are there to kind of improve. They see the organizations as kind of part of their development, as much as an employer, and that they've got a kind of a realistic that it's not a match forever.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so it is a match for as long as it works for both sides, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's true for anything in life, personal, professional relationships, and the places where you spend most of your time. And what I've actually developed a course that I teach to young women around having the language to describe who they are and who they want to be, and the goals that they have in service of getting to who they want to be. When you have that language, you are able to make much more distinct decisions that are based on logic, instead of emotion and longing. And so, you know, having this experience with so many colleagues that are like, no, 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 no. This company is great, but it's still a company and it doesn't define who I am. It's just part of my journey to get to who I am. That's an incredible, piece of wisdom that, like I said, that I carry with me, not only through making the decision. I have to choose this company, and this company has to choose me every day, every month, every year, right? So that you're not finding yourself 5 years down the line, like, how did I get here? How am I still here, stuck and unhappy? It's because we often need to take the time to figure out the language of us, of ourselves. What do we want? What do we like? What do we want to be? Who is it? How do we want to be described? And what do we want to be known for? And so doing the work of developing that narrative allows you this freedom to move through an organization and move through life with an intentionality that is sweet. That's the best way that I could describe it.
But people spend a long time in unhappy relationships, don't they?
Of course.
I mean that's the so. I mean, and it's the same in organizations as relationships.
Yes, comfortability, right? The fear of the unknown. I was just in a conversation yesterday with Jennifer McCullum, and she's the CEO of Catalyst, which is an organization that focuses on research around women in the workplace. But she has this great book called In Her Own Voice, and she talks about the 7 hurdles to reaching the pinnacle of where you want to be. And it talked about that inner critic, the roadway of the inner critic that really can prevent you and freeze you into a position, a place, a relationship, that doesn't serve you. And so many of us sit in that because there's rather be comfortable than fear of the unknown. But it's through, I think, sponsorship, mentorship, coaching. We could have a whole other session on coaching. Having someone that can hold you accountable, that can know the details of, what you're going through and where you want to go, that can hold your hand through any challenge, good or bad, that you're experiencing in your life, so that you can make the best of it. I tell people I stay coached up no matter the space that I'm in, and it's something that I've only learned within about the past 4 or 5 years, but like each season of my life, I have a coach that can help usher me through that season, so that, in addition to my close inner circle of, friends and family that I discuss things with, that I have someone that I'm talking about where I'm at and where I'm going each week, and can give me advice and perspective to keep me moving forward.
Each week.
Each week, yeah,
Yeah.
coaching each week, a weekly coaching session, yeah. And it's
Uh,
for spurts. I do mine 3 months, and then kind of take the time to reflect on those 3 months and see where I am, and then figure out, when the next coach, or is it a continuation? But giving time for it to breathe, so that I can actually put into practice all of those things that I've learned, and see what those outcomes are, so then I can make a decision on what I need next.
So, so you're global head of inclusion programs for women of color at Google. And where are we now in the discussion about and practice of inclusion?
Yeah, I think what's first of all, the role that I have is incredibly unique. That title does not exist in a lot of other spaces, if any. And I'll give some background as to how it came about. Data informs strategy, and we've talked a lot about data. And the data that we've used is both qualitative and quantitative. So we have our diversity annual report that gets put out every year that gives hiring, representation, and attrition numbers broken out by demographic. And then we have our internal data, or our qualitative data, which is our employee survey. And that, again, takes information from how do you feel about the internal processes that we have, to what are your sentiments of inclusion and belonging within this organization. And so when we have that, and especially having the demographic breakout, we're able to see where there are disparate experiences among the organization, and then we can apply resources to that. And so that's how my role came about, because we saw disparate experiences for Black, Latina, Indigenous, Asian women, and so the goal there was to invest resources to support those communities. What it also did, though, was provide a framework, again, to support all of our communities. Inclusion is not just based on race and gender. It's cultural, it's religious, it's sexual orientation, it's so many other facets. And the way in which we defined diversity, or marginalized groups, rather, when I started and where we are now, is completely expanding. And it's expanding every day. A few years ago, we would have never considered Ukrainians to be a marginalized community, right? Today, with what we're seeing playing out in the news, right? The marginalized communities, that is growing. And so we have a solid framework on what we, initially built for women of color, that can apply to all intersectional communities. Because the goal with DEI is to ensure that everyone is having um, the best experience within an organization. What that means, and the levers and the tools that we use to ensure that, just look different for the community, so that we can meet them where they are. The challenges and experiences that we have in the US can resonate in other regions, but it's not a one-to-one. It's not a lift and shift. And so we have to have that flexibility to be able to use a framework, but then curate it specifically for the community that's going to experience it.
Magdalena asked a question from Denmark. What are the barriers to inclusive culture, and what is the medicine for that? I'm not, I think the medicine is more available than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Magdalena, and I believe that is something that, again, it's a societal thing that we need to solve for, as a society. And so corporations are on the hook for, okay, what are you doing about DEI? What are you doing to solve it? But we need, as humans, to figure out, what is that medicine? How do we understand each other? How do we not assume bad intent, but also hold people accountable? And so it's a balance of understanding, and not understanding, having the skill set to endure tough conversations that doesn't result in just like throwing up your hands, cancel culture, dragging people, and just completely like obliterating their lives. There's a space where we can have deeply meaningful conversations that can say, okay, I don't get it, but I understand you, human to human, that we have this connection. and we can still figure this out together. And I don't mean this to sound like woo woo, we just need to like all hear each other and get along, but it's a big part of the puzzle that's missing right now in many of the crisis moments that we're seeing play out everywhere.
It's still a nice idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
the, what you describe yourself as a tribe builder, Stephanie.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
So finding community. When I left Lehman Brothers because I didn't feel like I had anyone that looked like me, that was in the same life stage as me, that I could connect with, that I had that community connection, I left. I left something that I had dreamed about from the age of 10. And so to this moment in this role of being global head of inclusion, that I'm solving for the Stephanie that was 18, 19, 18 when I graduated and started there and didn't have a community uh, to say, hey, I know it's tough, but like, let's figure it out together. Hey, I know it's tough, but you don't have to leave in the darkness of night. We can figure this out. And so I've built up that community for me personally. I've had great friends. Shout out to Heidi Smith, who is CTO of my tribe, that really grounds me and supports me in the best of ways through 3 a.m. text that says, "You got this," or "I haven't heard from you. What's going on? Let me get down in the rabbit hole with you." And build that space of understanding where you can vent and then you can strategize what your next move is. And again, it's professionally or personally, it's just in life you need that community. And oftentimes, particularly for women of color, or those at the intersection of multiple identities, you're constantly scanning a room for that community. And so it's not always going to exist on your team. It's not always going to exist in your organization. But we do have I feel, I'll speak in for me, I feel a duty to create those spaces so that even if you're not experiencing it here, you could find it over here. And I do that in my personal life, and I do that thankfully as you know, as an employee within an organization that values that need to create spaces for folks to just not feel so alone when they are navigating their career and their life.
Let's talk quickly about, you've got a couple of really interesting initiatives. Mother AI.
Yes.
Can you
So
just briefly describe what that is, Stephanie?
yes, I wish we had more time for that too. So, you know, I am executive at a tech company. I'm also a wife and a mother of 3 children. And the parenting journey that I've gone on has been so special to me. And the premise behind particularly Mother AI is teaching other parents how to leverage AI, not only for themselves to save time, sanity, and resources for the things that they have to do on our never ending to-do list, but also to be able to advocate on behalf of their children. The world that we lived in, discerning the difference between pre-technology and post-technology, is not the world that they experience today and will experience when they're in college or they're going out and looking for jobs or they're raising their families. And so all of these things are being built right now, and the diversity of voice is not there. The voice of parents and moms who are doing this thing day in, day out for decades is not in the room that is making the decisions and building the products and services that will impact our children there. And I am filling in the gap of bringing parents along this journey so they can have a voice in what's happening. No one's talking to us. We are being wholly ignored as parents, and I am dedicated to making a change so that our voice is in the space for what gets built through AI for our kids' generation and those thereafter.
And you're also involved with Parenting Backwards.
Yes. So again, the parenting journey has been critical to me. And so I started off with parenting backwards. And the philosophy behind that is parents having the same spaces, because I'm a space builder, a tribe builder, but also the same resources to build out their parenting skills as they do their professional and personal skills. We talked about coaches and mentors and sponsors, and there's all sorts of trainings and summits and conferences and opportunities to build who we want to be on the inside, who we want to be within our career and in our lives. But the side of like the parenting, why do you react the way that you do? Why do you parent the way that you parent? How do you want to live the life that you envision for you and your children? Where's the intentional and creative spaces for us to think through that? And so this has been my passion project that I'm building and figuring out in real time, but really want to invite folks there who are looking for ways to be intentional about their parenting journey, as well as um, finding age appropriate and creative ways to bring your children on the journey with you. So whether that's through financial health, physical health, all of the self-development things that we are investing ourselves in, I'm constantly thinking when I receive that information, okay, how can I teach my teen that? How can I teach my 7-year-old how to apply that or learn about it or have that language in their lexicon, so that they're not 40 and learning these lessons for the first time, but they're 10 and they're getting a sense of it. And in the moments as they get older, they can, have those seeds that were planted and really implement them into life. And so my mission and mantra in life is that I am all in and standing for women, particularly mothers, who are invested in creating the best life for themselves and their family. And so I am doing the work of creating these opportunities for elevation and investment and intention for them, both personally and professionally.
To find out more information about Stephanie's work and Mother AI and Parenting Backwards, look at iamslg.com as a starting point.
And it's motherai.com as well. itsmotherai.com. Thank you so much, Stuart. This was a great conversation.
Stephanie, we're out of time. I think we could have talked all day. Brilliant stories. And a brilliant example of, and I think the stuff about sponsorship and mentoring is really interesting. The difference between them and the importance of coaching, and the relationship between individuals and corporations is really interesting as well. It's something you've brought out, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your work and insights. Next week, we're joined by Martin Gonzalez, and Des will be talking to him. So thank you, everyone who's joined us today. And thank you, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone.